Welcome to Under the Microscope. I am your host, Jenny Germano. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. Today's topic is launching cannabis operations in a mature and saturated market. I would like to give a little bit about my background for those who are just joining for the first time. I founded the company 𝗖𝗍 Consulting based out of Denver, Colorado. I got my start working in the cannabis industry in Denver in 2009 until 2014 and helped convert medical cannabis operations over to the adult use market. We're celebrating 11 years here this month in May in 2026, and it's been a pretty incredible journey, and I help operators across the United States launch their cannabis operations and all things compliance, pretty much from application to operation for operators. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive in. Today I want to talk about something that I'm actively working on, which is launching in mature markets. And we focus a lot on emerging markets, and I see everyone's chasing the new and emerging markets, but I don't want the mature markets to be forgotten about. And I actually think there's still a lot of great opportunity. A lot of times people see the mature markets in a negative light. And obviously there's price compression, and the market has its own set of challenges. I always look at it this way. I split the markets into two. We have the new and emerging markets, and they have their whole mixed bag of challenges and what they're up against. And then we have the mature and saturated markets, and they have their own set of challenges that they're up against. But each market, those challenges can be easily faced and addressed. And there are people that are successful in the mature market. And I would also say with the markets, when you divide them up between emerging and mature markets, they're all in different phases, right? In Colorado, we've definitely been at it a while. We were the first out of the gate. I think it was Colorado and Washington State legalized adult use. The Colorado market has definitely been through a lot of ups and downs. I am beginning to see a rebound in Colorado, although some people might not agree with me with that. But I say that because I've helped launch probably like close to 6 or 7 cannabis operations in the last year and a half in Colorado with all brand new operators. There are people still coming into our market. People are leaving, people are coming, people are selling off distressed assets. We've got market compression, pricing compression, mergers and acquisitions. I feel like it's just really typical stuff that's happening in these mature markets. I want to break down what a launching looks like in a mature market. And it's very similar to an emerging market, but you do have to come in with a different strategy. With the emerging markets, everybody's coming in for the first time. It's a little bit more of a level playing field, where the mature market, you're coming in and you're competing with maybe people who have been in the market for 10 years, 5 years, or 3 years. That's why the mature markets have their own unique challenge. I want to talk about mature market launch realities, and I want to also point out that the license is actually not the competitive advantage. In the emerging market, the license can be more the competitive advantage, or what license type that you win, or how many licenses that you win. In a mature market, maybe having more than one license can definitely be a competitive advantage, but overall, the license is not the competitive advantage anymore, especially if you're a small operator. Obviously, larger operators who might have 10 dispensaries or they're an MSO, they're just, I consider them to be in a whole different part of the market. For the most part, it's MSOs, and then you have small operators, maybe people that have 4 licenses or less, or just one standalone facility. And they're all competing at different levels. In many mature states like Colorado, Michigan, California, and Oregon, the market already has operators, infrastructure, the pricing pressure that I talked about, and then customer expectations And the question is no longer, can you get licensed? In some states, it's capped, like Missouri, and they're a capped market. And so the mature markets I'm really discussing are these open and free cannabis markets. Capped markets, they're a little bit more challenging to get into. One, somebody has to be selling an existing license or brand, or you might have an agreement where you're coming in and working under somebody's manufacturing facility, or as partnerships and collaborations. But in the capped markets, they're not awarding any more licenses in that state. They're essentially controlling the market. Like we learned on podcast episode last week that the Missouri market, the price per pound is above $2,000 a pound, where in Colorado, we are now below $1,000 a pound. And that's just because our market is saturated. It's an open and free market. There's no limited on licensing. There are caps in cities and towns. So when you get to the local municipality in a mature and open and free market like Colorado or Michigan or Oregon, you have to also look at the local city and town. They might be capped. Denver is pretty much capped. And then you've got a lot of the rural areas outside the metropolitan area where maybe they only allow 3 dispensaries and they don't even allow cultivation or manufacturing. So it's really different in every state. And that will determine whether or not you can get licensed. In Colorado, people can still come into our state and they can apply for a license, or they'll have to find an existing location. Like I said, the market's capped in Denver, but they can go to a lot of different places and areas throughout our state and still apply for a license. And the same in New Mexico, a mature market as well. You can still apply for a license in New Mexico and launch a facility. So the question becomes, can you execute better than the mature market around you? And it's really something to think about. What makes you so different from everyone else that's in this market? What makes you so different than the 600 stores, dispensaries in Denver? What makes you think that your dispensary can do better than those 600 other licensed facilities or the other 300 or 400 cultivation facilities in that mature market? And cultivation facilities, they tend to be the ones that get hit the hardest when price compression begins to happen. It becomes too hard to keep up with the cost of growing, the commercial building, the lights, electricity, all those things, labor costs, especially when you have larger operators pumping and dumping into the market, the race to the bottom, selling cannabis at the lowest price possible, which then affects high quality cannabis like craft cultivation, people who specialize in specific strains and craft cannabis. I still see operators underestimate the build-out costs, and this is launching in a mature market. I see this all the time going into mature markets. The pre-revenue burn, slower than expected ramp-up, labor costs, delayed approvals, and early forecasting misses. I would say build-out costs can be extremely challenging, and also around permits and planning at the local municipality level. That causes delays and adds to that pre-revenue burn. And you could talk to any operator that's been trying to get open now for 2 to 3 years across the country, in whether it's a mature market or emerging market. The pre-revenue burn is a harsh reality of the cannabis industry. And it's something to really think about, because if you're not well funded or you do not have enough capital raised, you end up pulling money from other things. For example, you could pull money that you were going to invest in your inventory, or money that you're going to pay a contractor or security, or maybe money that you're going to be spending on genetics or a specific part of your lab. I've seen a lot of people run out of money or not have enough runway when they're starting off these launches in a mature market. So one of the biggest reasons launches struggle is not necessarily because the concept was wrong. It's because the operator runs out of that financial runway that I just talked about before the business even stabilizes. there's so much that comes up pre-revenue. You can be pre-revenue for 2 to 3 years to get operational. God, just recently in the last month, I have a couple clients that are in this situation where they've been trying to get open for years. I just recently met an operator where it took him about 3 years before he launched his extraction lab, and the burn rate was insane. These are things to think about. And I've had other operators come on. You want to actually raise 3 times more than you initially are planning to raise for capital, and that you'll need 3 times more the amount of money than you think that you're going to need. And a lot of times people, when they do their forecasting or the pro formas and they're trying to get the numbers figured out, people should go above and beyond those numbers because it's just not going to be enough. And that happens a lot with a lot of people I meet in the industry. So speed matters, but it's not just going fast. You really have to be disciplined, right? And it's the hurry up and wait. A lot of waiting and then hurry up, drinking through the fire hose, and then waiting again, and then hurry up and then drinking through the fire hose. Because there's so many things that are out of your control in these launches. There's so many moving pieces. It really can be very overwhelming. And sometimes you're almost hostage to the construction, to the permitting, to the planning, to local municipality issues. It's not even the launch and getting open and serving customers if you're a dispensary, because you're direct to consumer the day that you open. And with grow and manufacturing, you're not direct to consumer. You can open and sit there and say, well, I'm going to put out one SKU and do R&D with these other SKUs, or I'm going to grow this one strain and I'm going to have a harvest here in 120 days or whatnot. And then I'm still going to be sourcing genetics. So cultivation obviously takes the longest to get operational. Manufacturing, you can get that up and going, especially if you're doing like cold rooms and rosin, where it's really just temperature control and your presses and washing machines. It can be some of the quickest to market. But when you have extraction equipment and the fire department's involved and you've got blast-proof walls and explosion booths and all these things, it can get challenging and it's going to take a lot longer to get open. I always say do the easiest thing possible to get open and get 1 or 2 SKUs and get past all your inspections and then add some of the more challenging stuff later. Now that might not work for everyone, but it costs more money to try to do everything at once. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. Every month of delay means more that burn I've been talking about. And like I said, the burn is real. Any cannabis operator that you meet, ask them about the burn rate pre-revenue. It's pretty sickening, actually. That means your launch execution needs to be tight across construction, permitting, compliance systems, staffing, SOP development, vendor setup, and operational readiness. I would say construction and permitting, there's so much out of your control, completely out of your control. This is where all the problems happen before you get open, is construction and permitting. This is where all the delays come from. It could be equipment, it could be HVAC, it could be ventilation systems have to be ordered, or maybe it's coming overseas and it's coming on a shipping container and it's going to take 3-4 months to get there. And there's just so many different things, and permitting issues and plans getting sent to the planning office and sent back and asking for corrections and updating, and the costs of working with an architect. Construction and architects are big time burns for anyone that's ever been through this. SOP development, there's not a lot of challenges with that. You can actually be working on your SOP development. There's all these other things that you can be working on while you're up against the delays and the challenges. Let's break this down by license type. And each category, they all face different launch pressures. We're going to start with cultivation and grow operators. Now, when I do cultivation launches, I work with somebody who specializes in cultivation and growing. I typically come in and handle helping people with the training and the seed sale tracking and the compliance. But I've done enough that I can speak about it today. I just want to say I'm not a growing specialist whatsoever. But when it comes to compliance and operations and common sense and getting these facilities off the ground and all the issues that they face, that I can talk about. Launching a cultivation facility in a mature market can be especially difficult because you may be entering an already crowded supply environment, which we know, for example, Colorado is extremely saturated. And specifically, at one point, gosh, we must have 2,000 cultivation facilities in Colorado. I haven't checked in a while, but I thought we're down to like under 300. And more are going out of business or selling off the cultivation license because the race to the bottom, when you don't have a capped market, it's all about the race to the bottom to get the cheapest prices per pound out there to sell to customers. And so I think cultivation facilities pretty much suffer the most because obviously manufacturing, they're getting materials really cheap. Dispensaries, they're upselling. It can be really challenging because it's crowded and flower. It's available everywhere. This means producing is not enough. If you're going to be launching a cultivation facility, you should be asking yourself a couple questions. What exactly is your strategy? Are you craft or are you pump and dump? For those who don't know what a pump and dump, that is a large cultivation facility. It's typically somebody who's producing a lot of flower to where they're trying to flood the market with all their flower at a low cost. And you're just pumping and dumping product into the market. Ask yourself, is it going to be about genetics, operational efficiency? Where do you see yourself? Operators who launch more successfully tend to start lean, build efficient facility design. Running these facilities can be really expensive. Understand post-harvest labor costs. Develop wholesale relationships early. This is a must. I also say create a brand. Create a brand. I don't know why this has happened in Colorado, but for some reason, the cultivation operators in Colorado never really took to having it be all about a brand and getting their brand out there and marketing themselves. It was always like, here's my turkey bag of flour, and the dispensaries just put it in pop tops with their logo and selling it. And a lot of the customers don't even know who the cultivation facility is, other than there's a license number on the label. And Colorado operators missed the mark on that. I really think they left that one on the table because you go into Michigan and Missouri and these other markets, there's tons of cultivation facilities. They're all about branding themselves and marketing themselves and having pre-pack, but bulk. Have pre-pack for those who want to do pre-pack with really nice branded flour. And then for people who need bulk, you sell them the bulk flour. And obviously, we're seeing a lot more pre-pack in Colorado than we've ever seen. I was running a vertically integrated dispensary in 2014, and we had pre-pack, but we were ahead of our time. I thought it was pretty awesome. It was really well designed from the container. Then it was like in a well-designed box that it came in. And we were too advanced for the industry. It really massively got rejected in Colorado, and people just didn't like it. They wanted to watch the bud tender put that bud in the container, and they wanted to see what they were getting before they bought it. And that's just how it was. And it still can be that way with deli style for sure. Some other operators who have launched have been more successful. They tend to develop those wholesale relationships. I also want to pivot over to manufacturing. They have a different challenge. So on the manufacturing side, mature markets often already have crowded shelves, as we know. In Colorado, I don't want to use Missouri too much because they are a capped market, but we'll look at Michigan's a great market. There's so many brands in Michigan, so many incredible Michigan brands for manufacturing. And the same in New Mexico and Oregon and Washington and Massachusetts and these more mature markets. When you have all these crowded shelves, that means product differentiation. It can become really critical. What makes you different than the guy that you're next to on the shelf, right? If you're going to be on a pegboard, and which often happens in dispensaries because they're limited on space, they put up the peg wall, your product is going to be placed to another product. So when I walk in and I'm looking at, I don't know, 20 to 30 different types of concentrate brands, more like the all-in-ones or vape carts, and a wall of them, how are you going to stand out and be different from the one that you're next to on the wall? Before you launch, ask yourself, what problem does your product solve? In some states, they might call it processing. I'm talking the manufacturing of products. This can be concentrates, extraction. Concentrate category is huge, but the whole entire concentrate category, edibles, tinctures, transdermal. There's so many things that you can do on the manufacturing side, including pre-rolls and rolling joints. A lot of times that can happen on the manufacturing side. And also the cultivation side. It's split between those two licenses. It just depends on the state regulations. How are you different from everyone else? Why will consumers choose this product? Does the value proposition make sense quickly? And is the pricing realistic? The cost it takes for you to make it, and then what you're going to have to sell it for wholesale, and then what that dispensary is going to sell it for. The distribution matters. This is where many manufacturing launches struggle. Having product does not automatically mean shelf placement, retail support, and product velocity and repeat purchases. Not only that, but can you get on the shelves? A lot of these manufacturing companies that I meet, it might even take them a whole year just to get into 15 dispensaries. A whole year. And it can definitely be a challenge for manufacturing companies. Common mistakes I see is launching too many SKUs early. That is a killer. Just come out with a gummy or come out with a chocolate bar or lotion or whatever it is, your unique product that you're coming out with. Rosin is really big right now. Come out with a rosin gummy. People love rosin. It's clean. It's solventless. Don't try to launch 5 or 6 SKUs out of the gate. Building products without retailer input. Work with your retailers. Build relationships. Get their input. You could easily do some research and development. Team up with your local consumption lounge. If in your state, host some retailers at the lounge to share some product samples. What's it going to do for retailers? One, they get to go hang out at a consumption lounge, try products, have conversations, and potentially do business with a new vendor. It's a win-win for everyone. There's definitely different ways that you can get retailer support. Other common mistakes, weak margin modeling. I see this all the time. Like I said before, not getting retailer input, not getting consumer input, compliance issues in packaging and labeling. This is the big one. And overestimating the first year in sales. It takes time to build that up in a mature market. I often see stronger launches when operators start with fewer products and focus on the repeatability. I'm going to move on to dispensaries. In mature retail markets, customer acquisition can be expensive. You're often entering markets where existing stores already have loyal customers, established systems, purchasing leverage, and operational efficiencies. I would like to note, though, people get excited when a new dispensary opens. A prime example is in Grand Junction, Colorado, they awarded 10 dispensaries. And you would think, why would somebody go to the 10th dispensary? They were the last to open. And I had 𝗬𝗍𝗀𝗀 on. He's the founder of 𝗘𝗍𝗀𝗀 Dispensary. He was the last to open in Grand Junction. But they came. You want to know why they came? Because they were curious. They were excited to see what number 10 looked like. What does number 10 look like? And they all came in and they were checking it out. And you really do have that piece in the mature market. You have curious customers that want to see, are you offering something different than the place that I currently shop at? Maybe the pricing's better. Maybe there's products they've never seen before. I have another person that I worked with out on the Eastern Plains. He's carrying products that a lot of people that live on the Eastern Plains have never seen or heard of that he's getting in his store. And that drives customers to his store because he's carrying a huge amount of products that typically don't make it out that far from the Denver metropolitan area. Why will customers choose your store? That's a question that you have to answer before your opening day. It's not, if I build it, they will come. It's not, I'm selling weed. That's all I need to tell people, and they're just going to show up. It doesn't work that way. There has to be thought into it. You can have the most basic dispensary, not fancy, but you can still have a strategy. Let's say you don't have a lot of money and maybe you're a micro business or social equity or a mom and pop, and you don't have a lot of capital, and it's not going to be fancy, but you're going to be able to offer really high quality service and products. You can still come in with strategy, even if you didn't have a lot of money to spend on, I don't know, the decorations and the vibe. You can still drive business. I've seen it done a lot of different ways where people create the vibe and have a different scene, or the Apple Store vibe, or maybe they have the alien spaceship vibe, or they just have an American flag taped to the wall, and that place is bumping and busy all the time. So it's really, what is your strategy to working with customers? Are you treating customers the right way? Listen to the episode from last week. They really talk about their people first business model. Don't worry about nickeling and diming your customers when you're at a dispensary. If somebody complains about a product or says they didn't like it, who cares? Don't sit there and gripe about that. You don't want to give them their money back. Just give them the new product. I think Forrest made a great point. These people are spending $10,000 to $15,000 a year in your store. You can't get caught up on $5 or $10 or $20 compared to the bigger picture. If they're loyal, spending $10,000 to $15,000 a year with you, what is the big deal with just giving them the product and making them happy, but that you're willing to take care of them as a customer and give really good customer service? There's a lot of questions you need to be asking yourself on opening day. And product education, which is product education for bud tenders, is everything. So on the manufacturing side, you can increase your sales just through product education with bud tenders. And I should have mentioned that when we were on the manufacturing side, but I'll just say it now. Anyone who owns a manufacturing facility is going to be making an edibles brand or concentrates. Focus on your education with your bud tenders, really getting in deep with explaining your product and getting them samples and getting feedback and spending time with them. As an owner, get in there and spend time with the bud tenders. They don't really get that kind of attention. They usually get sales reps. I'd want them to meet the owner. I think it would actually go a long way. And that's going to make the bud tenders want to sell your product and talk about your product because you spent that time with them. It's really something that you should have be part of your strategy. It usually comes down to these things, and I mentioned a couple of them already. Picking the right location. I've been in dispensary locations where I literally said, oh my God, how do they even, I couldn't even find the dispensary. How does the customer find the dispensary? And you can have a really bad location. Convenience, obviously, people who live in the neighborhood are probably going to shop at your dispensary because they can walk out their door and just go shop like they would a liquor store or a neighborhood, a grocery store. Service and quality, especially nowadays, it seems that service has really gone downhill. So you can really win people over with really good service. The bar has been lowered tremendously on service. And so I really think if people up their game with service, it goes a long way. Speed. Now, yeah, speed. might be for a lot of people. I'm slow. I don't like when I feel rushed at the dispensary. There's so much to look at. I'll talk about somebody who's in my age group, and maybe there's other people out there like me. I walk in, especially if I don't know what I want. My God, there's so much stuff to look at. It's almost overwhelming. There's so many decisions, and of course you're spending time. But for some people, there's speed, right? They want that. So I think to combat that, you do online ordering. If your state allows online ordering, for people who don't want to have to wait and be behind somebody like me who would probably annoy the heck out of them, allow that online feature where they can place an order and come pick up. They already know what they want, right? And then you can service someone like myself who likes to go at a slower pace. Product curation. So really curating unique products. I'm always researching what new products are coming on the market. It's not really popular. It's not in all the dispensaries because you have all the brands that are like in multiple states. Wana a really good example. I remember Wana when they first started in Colorado. They were like the rest of us. I think back in Colorado at one point, there was only like 8 brands. There weren't many brands in the early days. And now there's so many you can't keep up. Do research. Find out who's new in your market. That is the one benefit of the saturated, mature market. I would like to highlight a positive, incredible selection in the mature markets. You're not having to wait for other people to build out their businesses. You've got established brands. You've got brand choice, lots to choose from. And those are some of the positives about launching in a mature market. You're already going to know that you're going to need $50,000, $60,000 to launch for inventory, where in a new emerging market, it could be $90,000 to $100,000. Not only that, if you're not vertically integrated, the vertically integrated operators, they're going to take care of themselves first. They're going to take care of their partnerships second, and you're going to be last on the list to get product. And so you should partner early with people, dispensaries. That's their struggle. But in these mature markets, they don't really have that issue. You could still partner if you really need to be vertically integrated, but you can't and you're standalone. You can have a supply chain agreement with a grow and saying, hey, I would like you to supply our dispensary, I don't know, with 60 pounds of flower a week, and I'll do a supply chain agreement for a year at this cost, 10 strains or whatever. And you can have that agreement and it's almost like you're vertically integrated. And they have somebody they're supplying consistently, right? Because they're harvesting every week. And 2, you're getting product in every week. You're getting drops to your store, and you don't have to worry about somebody buying up all the product. I had somebody recently say, when you discount, it's really hard to go back. And it's true. And so you have to think about your coupon strategy. And if that's really what you want to do in the dispensary then goes to the manufacturer saying, can you give me this product at this wholesale cost so I can sell it at this cost? And so you end up hurting the manufacturers because you're always asking them to cut their pricing down too, just so you can sell their products at a lower price. And they might tell you no. I'm sure they tell some people no. They don't want to get stuck in the pricing nightmare. I still occasionally see operators assume that opening the doors will automatically create traffic. In mature markets, that's rarely enough. It just will not be enough. And so you have to think of things like I talked about, customer experience, pricing strategy, your location, quality. Those things are really important. So some common mistakes I see with dispensary launches is overstaffing too early, 100% right out of the gate. You don't want to start with 9 or 10 staff. If you are the owner and your family and everyone's working, everyone should be working the most, the absolute most, and then have part-time people help you at your dispensary and build it up gradually. But you don't want to launch out of the gate with 6 or 7 full-time employees. Now, this is a mature market. I'm not talking about an emerging market. So please I would address an emerging market completely differently with staffing. We're talking a mature market where they have lots of options, lots of choices. You have to drive traffic to your store and you have a lot of competitors, and it can be done, but you really don't need to have 9 full-time employees out of the gate whatsoever. You can hire employees as you need them. You start getting busier, hire more employees. Poor inventory planning, I see this all the time. Your inventory that you have your first 2 months of launching, that inventory can completely look different a year down the road. You can't underestimate your customers. In a mature market, this is not emerging, they're going to walk in and they're going to say, I can go to 25 other dispensaries and the shelves are going to be packed. Why is your shelf not have a lot of product on it? They'll look at it as there's no excuse. So I'm in Colorado. There's product everywhere. I shouldn't walk into your dispensary and not be able to get product. And that's what you're up against in Colorado. Now, an emerging market, everyone could be struggling. Everyone could be running out of product when they're trying to get operational and there's supply chain issues. But we don't have supply chain issues in Colorado or Michigan or Massachusetts or Oregon. There's no supply chain issues. There's tons of product. So you really do have to have your shelves well stocked. Also, weak opening cash flow assumptions, and then trying to serve everyone instead of defining a target customer. And if you're going to serve everyone, then you're going to have to break everything into categories and have all your tiers figured out. And there's a whole strategy behind menu building and tiered pricing and who you're targeting. And if you want to target all age groups and from connoisseur to mids to budget shoppers, then you have to have the supply chain to meet those demands. The strongest dispensary launches usually know who they serve and what kind of customer experience they want to own. I would say also, if you're in a mature market, you can go shop your competition. Everyone's open. You can go look at their menus. You can go in and secret shop them and get their experience and what things you liked or what things you didn't like. It's so easy to do in a mature market. These are some of the advantages that you don't have in new emerging markets. There's not a lot of data out there yet, but in mature markets, there's lots of data. There's lots of things that you can look up. There's lots of information that you can get. I want to end on cannabis hospitality lounges. These are something that are slowly taking off in the U.S. I know Nevada, they had a huge round of consumption lounges. It's been very challenging to get these lounges launched in Colorado, specifically because you can't open them everywhere and they're restricted. And we're seeing lounges and regulations get approved and pass legislation in other states that are coming online. I believe New Jersey and Massachusetts. And I thought Rhode Island, I might be mistaken. So we're going to see more and more of these lounges opening up across the United States. I think the lounges are a wonderful opportunity. I think there's thousands of ways to look at a cannabis lounge and different things that you can do with a cannabis lounge. And it really depends on how your state licenses them. I'll explain a couple models. The lounge model where you're just providing a space for people to consume cannabis. They have to bring in their own cannabis. There might be restrictions like they can have food, they can't have food, they can bring in food. You can sell prepackaged food. You can't have food at all. You can have a cannabis lounge where they go to your dispensary and the lounge is next door, and then they buy it and bring it into the dispensary. So those are the couple of models I've seen. There's also the hospitality and sales model where they can't bring product in. They have to purchase the product, similar to a dispensary model where the inventory is at the hospitality consumption lounge and they have to buy it. They can't just come in and buy it and leave like a dispensary. They actually have to come onto the premise and consume the product. Some states might let you take the product with you that you didn't finish consuming. Other states, you might not be able to take it with you at all. Once again, we're all siloed. Every state is different with these cannabis lounges. I think they're a huge opportunity, and I think they can successfully launch in mature markets because there's not a lot of them. If you think about it, we don't really have that many in Denver, even in other states that are opening up. We don't really know quite yet because there's not a ton open and people are still launching these. I would say I think the Cannabis Lounge is the most challenging license to open for the fact that they have the biggest risk exposure for compliance, because with a cultivation facility, their risk exposure obviously is compliance and testing and the seed-to-sale tracking system, recalls regarding public safety. If somebody gets sick, they could get sued. There's that liability. Dispensaries, their circle of risk is smaller than a manufacturer or a cultivator. Their circle of risk is really serving someone under the age of 21, diversion, and there's also inversion issues on the manufacturing side and cultivation side. But when you get to the consumption lounge, the circle of risk is huge. The liability is much like a bar, right? When you're at a bar and serving alcohol and that person gets in a car and they drive it and they kill somebody and they're drinking and driving, who gets sued? The bar. The bartender gets in trouble. They could get a huge violation. They could get sued. The insurance for that bar is probably really expensive. Insurance for bars, I'm just guessing. And so then we bring into the account that you're going to have people on your premises consuming cannabis. You don't know anything medically about them. They could have an interaction. They could smoke something. They could have a seizure. They could pass out. So many things can happen. They could eat or consume something that interacts with the prescription drug that they're taking. There's so many scenarios that can happen with the consumption lounge. And so the risk is greater to public health as to me just going to a dispensary, buying that vape cart and going home. Can I still have an adverse event? Absolutely. I can have an adverse event at my house. But when somebody comes to a consumption lounge, what if they were drinking at the bar next door? What if they were doing psychedelics? And I think the circle of risk is larger. So a cannabis lounge is not simply a dispensary with seating. It operates at the intersection of cannabis regulation, hospitality operations, local permitting, which I talked about, the building review, the fire review, the public health expectations. It depends on where you're launching and what your town's restrictions are. But essentially, the health department is going to be involved, the fire department, the state regulators, the local regulators, and you have to manage overconsumption like you do with alcohol. And you have to spot over-intoxication, and then you have to deal with it. And you have to make sure you're providing people a way to get home in case they can't drive their car, just like with alcohol. So it's similar to a bar and restaurant that serves alcohol. It's not budtending. Dispensaries, the budtender stands behind a counter and they're educating you and talking to you about a product. Now with the hospitality consumption lounge, you're servicing people at tables, dap bars. You're walking around zones in a building. You might have indoor and outdoor and a patio, depending on what your consumption lounge is. You might have entertainment at that consumption lounge or music or events. And you have to have the complete site control. And at a dispensary, people come in and they leave and they maybe spend 10 minutes. Now you have people that are on site for an hour to 2 hours or even longer if there's an event, and you're having complete site control, and not only that, but customer control. And then you're having to track that they're not consuming over that limit for the day, and you're monitoring every person and how much cannabis they're consuming so they don't consume over an ounce. And I would hope that nobody would sit there and smoke a whole ounce of cannabis at a consumption lounge, but the law is a law, and you have to manage what people are consuming and tracking that. The circle of risk, it's bigger. It's bigger. My God, imagine having to do all that. And you're trying to give good service and talk about products, and people are testing products, and you're not getting high with them, right? Most of the regulations, they don't allow, the employees can't get high and smoke products with the consumers. The build out cost is enormous because of the ventilation system and the odor control and all these things that come with it. I think hospitality lounges are a great investment. It just depends on how you look at it. A lot of people don't think that they'll be successful, or they look at what happened in Nevada and those lounges going out of business. I'm not sure if that was a consumption lounge issue or maybe it was a Las Vegas issue. Some of the operational questions that you should be asking yourself is, if you're going to be opening one of these lounges, what does guest flow look like? How long do the guests stay for? What's the table turn? Is it 1 hour, 2 hours? Are you going to restrict that so they can only be at a table an hour and a half, and then you have the next person coming? Like, the flow is important. Outdoor versus indoor. Are you going to have a reservation table system or not? What can they smoke different things inside versus outside? What does the labor look like during peak periods? You're going to have more like hospitality servers than bud tenders. You'll have to have people educated like bud tenders, but essentially people who come from the restaurant industry, hospitality industry, these are going to be your target employees to work in these cannabis consumption lounges. People with that experience are going to be really great because they're going to understand the zones and how to run to tables. What does a service actually look like? There has to be a lot of thought that goes into your service. You have to really take the time to think about, what are you going to provide, and what are all the revenue streams are you going to create from that lounge? You can't just rely on people are just going to come in and smoke weed and that's going to be enough. It's a business. You really have to come up with ways to build and create revenue funnels in your business, and then how you're going to do that for your lounge. Lounges are the most complex license type due to that risk exposure I talked about, especially around occupancy, ventilation, building department approvals, fire department review, local interpretation of the rules. And so these revenue models, they matter. It's so important to think about your revenue funnels. Operators need to be realistic around having guests throughout, the average spend, labor utilization, staffing efficiency, and then your operating hours. And of course, all this ties to compliance and your local rules and regulations. And obviously, this is all going to be woven into all those decisions. I always say compliance is part of every single decision that you make in your regulated cannabis business. The lounge needs operational design, and not just a concept, not just that dispensary vibe. You really have to think about these things. What's going to make someone come to your lounge? What are the things surrounding that community or that area that you can tap into and collaborate and work with your neighbors? And how can you work with other businesses and support other businesses? Across all these license types, there are some patterns that I'm consistently seeing among the stronger launches. And wrapping up, I'm just going to talk about what successful mature market launches have in common. One, through all these licenses that I've been talking about, clear positioning. They know where they fit in the market. That's just what you have to do in a mature market. In an emerging market, you can be paving the way, but in a mature market, 800 to 2,000 companies that already paved the way. So now you have to figure out where you fit in the market, or where you stand out. Can you stand out among those 2,000 businesses? Conservative financial modeling, they assume tighter margins and slower ramp up. So we have operational discipline as another one. They build systems before they scale. This is so true. You really should have all your systems in place. Realistic timelines, they plan for delays rather than assuming perfect execution. and focus. They avoid doing too much too early. I think this was a good topic, and launching in a mature cannabis market is absolutely still possible. And there's a lot of naysayers out there. You just have to get out of the bubble sometimes and realize that other people are launching successfully. I help operators do it all the time in mature markets. Mature markets reward discipline, clarity, operational readiness, and realistic expectations. In today's environment, the license itself is rarely going to be the competitive piece or the differentiator. Execution is. And operators who tend to perform best are the ones who understand their market that they're in. They understand their numbers. They build their launch around long-term sustainability and not just opening day. And hopefully this was helpful. I wanted to give the mature markets a lot of love. I love my home state of Colorado. I always get so excited when I get to help somebody launch their business here. And I love going into other states like Missouri and Massachusetts and other states. I had somebody in New Mexico reach out for some launch help. I really think there's a lot of positives. And once again, I would like to remind people that no matter what market you're entering, every market's going to have their pros and cons. There's no perfect market. And I just hope people can look at the mature markets and really see there's still a lot of opportunity in these markets. And pretty soon in the next 5 years, all these states across the U.S. market, they're all going to catch up to Colorado and Massachusetts and Michigan. And we have the rescheduling happening, and one day will be descheduled. And the cannabis market is going to look completely different in 10 years from now. And this conversation might not even matter because the whole entire market's going to look different. But eventually there's going to be price compression everywhere. And these new and emerging markets like New Jersey, they're going to be just like Massachusetts and Minnesota. They're going to be just like Colorado. It's going to happen. It's coming for everyone. Essentially, they're all going to have to learn what they need to do to manage their businesses in a mature market. If you think about it, there's liquor stores all over the place. Everywhere you go, there's liquor stores. Selling alcohol is not new. That industry, I don't know how old the alcohol industry is, but it's older than cannabis. They're very well established, and yet I can still go and apply for a liquor license. I can open a wine store, a wine bar. I can go and open a restaurant. Opening a restaurant is nothing new. People have been doing it for decades. That's what cannabis is going to become, where it's just going to be the normal thing that people do. And you can do it in every state. There'll be some places that it's banned, just like there's some places you can't buy alcohol in certain counties. And it's still going to be that way for cannabis. It's going to be blended in just like alcohol is in restaurants, and it's not going to be any different. And eventually that's going to happen. And every state is going to have to face what we're facing in Colorado, which means people still have businesses in mature markets, and they still need services, and they still need help, and they still have compliance challenges. They still need to order products in the supply chain. They still need employees. There's lots of things that mature markets still need. Lots of love for the mature markets out there all across the United States. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. And for those who like to stream the podcast, it's available on Apple and Spotify and wherever you like to listen. And please check out my YouTube channel. Go and subscribe. It's at Under the Microscope with Jenny. And thanks to all of our listeners around the United States and also in all the other countries that tune in. I really appreciate everyone who tunes in every week, and we'll see you on next week's episode.